Hey everyone, and welcome to our panel, Metaverse Development, Infrastructure, and Investment Trends. My name is Wes Levitt, and I'm Head of Strategy at Theta Labs, where we built a data blockchain, which is the leading media and entertainment-focused blockchain out there. Metaverse has been a particularly close focus of ours for a while now. We got our start in VR technology in early days in 2016 and 2017. A little early from a hardware standpoint, but now we're actually starting to see the potential of that come to fruition. And we're really focused on building infrastructure tools for the metaverse, primitives in the video space and NFTs and so on to help supply developers of metaverses. So kick things off here, we have three great investors that are actively investing in metaverse companies, tokens. I think it'd be interesting first to see what are the trends you're seeing in the landscape from the companies and projects looking to raise. And if you've noticed a change, how has that changed since October when Facebook rebranded to Meta and scrambled the entire focus on this space? So Ibrahim, why don't you your take first? What are you seeing in trends in investment in this space?
Sure. Thank you, Wes. We've seen quite a number of companies lately innovating in the tools and infrastructure space, and I think they span the gamut from infrastructural deep companies targeting things like connectivity, compute, and storage, all the way to more abstracted layers. For example, companies in the digital twin space, companies in the identity and access management space, to all the way to tools like potential competitors to Unity and Unreal to help people build things for the metaverse. So it's quite an exciting time, and we've definitely seen a lot more interest, both from the founder community starting up companies, as well as the investment community looking for opportunities in the space.
Yeah, that's been a bit of our thinking as well. It's, of course, like a lot of things in crypto, a bit of a gold rush into it. And so rather than building a competing metaverse, which there are dozens of now and many more on the way, we've been working at Theta about building primitives like making it easier for video to be dropped into various metaverses and these type of developer tools and supplying the different metaverses. Part of because that's our background, also because from a business standpoint, selling the picks and shovels can be very, very useful instead of making another competitor. Nick, I know at Alpha Zero, you've also been investing in not just the infrastructure layer, but a lot of metaverses specifically. So how do you look at that as which investments to focus on, given there's so many targeting your attention right now?
Yes, I'll echo the sentiment of my fellow panelists. We like the picks and shovels, this gold rush. But we also, as you mentioned, have invested in several metaverses. We own land in several metaverses. I'd say that's the toughest because, and mind you, some of these investments we made years ago, but Decentraland and Sandbox were the clear leaders when there wasn't anybody interested in this. Now everybody and all these projects want to tack on a metaverse or make a metaverse, and Pepsi and Coke are going to have warring metaverses or whatever it is. But before this time of excitement and general exuberance among the investing public, we invested in several people who were already building on this idea, and that's kind of helped guide us. Now we take we're really looking at them with a harder eye because everyone is making a metaverse. So we're looking for ones that are interoperable or looking to work with other metaverses. And I think there's a lot of interesting aspects of a hybrid of closed or decentralized metaverses. So, we kind of look for a value proposition and, something different, which is hard to find nowadays because there's a lot of similar stuff. And if they don't want to work together, it's going to be a closed system. It's going to be a hard sell sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of different interests at play in these closed versus open systems. Mark, I'm sure at Sony you're seeing some of that back and forth. There's successful decentralized ones, but of course, Sony has the resources to make their own metaverse. So which are you investing in more? More open ones, or do Sony look at this as a space that they can take on themselves?
Yeah, so to be clear, so I think everybody wants to to see an open metaverse. So there's not one metaverse, there are many multiverses, and however, they need to be connected. And the interoperability, a very difficult word, interoperability, you know what I mean? So meaning also that the infrastructure layers are talking to each other, meaning one is set on this kind of blockchain, the other one on the other blockchain. So at the end, all of these blockchains needs to talk to each other to bring you as a content creator, if you are owning some avatars, some fashion items, NFTs within one of these multiverses, you want to carry them out into another one. So for me, it's not a question. So we will see a lot of different multiverses existing, coexisting next to each other. And then we will also see that there will pop up some companies which are dominant in the different multiverses, some of them who are building the infrastructure and connect them. But at the end, the content creator, he's in the middle, or they are in the middle. So, and they are, of course, they don't want to be limited down to, let's say, one multiverse. They would like to carry out and streamline what they do and connect with others. So for us, it's an open world. And we see a lot of companies currently coming deeply into this, like the announcement of Meta and Microsoft has led to a lot of capital coming into this market, which is not basically always a good thing. Could be also some of the downsides if so much money is there. And we see tokenization and so many different aspects. But to make it in a nutshell, so I think we are also looking into different infrastructure layers, which are, let's say, combining a different type. So you need advertisement in these kind of multiverses. You need a currency. You need a legal perspective. You need to avoid toxic behavior. So, and then of course you need currencies and you need different layers. So it's potentially a lot of companies which will dominate these sectors are potentially not even founded yet. So in the next decade, we will see a lot of things evolving, and we are happy to follow that the interest is increasing. That's very important, because before it was just a handful of investors going around and looking into try to bring capital. Now the eyes are open.
Yeah, it's really, I agree with you that it's a bit of a mixed bag when you see how much capital is entering the space and how much attention it is. Every day, it seems like there's another announcement from 2 days ago. It was Walmart issuing a raft of new patents around metaverse and NFT development. I mean, it's great to see the concept gain favor in a lot of these circles, but at the same time, there's so many different motives for different companies. I think it's a really interesting question, and potentially a worrisome one, about who controls all these things you just mentioned, Mark. Who controls the policing of content? Who controls currency within them? And I don't think that's a question you really can answer right now. I mean, where do you, and this is to all of you guys, where do you see that playing out? Do you think there's this current dynamic of different power centers to continue, or do you think they're going to see the consolidation like we did in Web 2.0, where eventually it's 4 or 5 names we all know?
I think it's the nature of industries to go through periods of consolidation and periods of fragmentation. And given how early we are with the metaverse or metaverses or multiverses, I think we'll see a lot more activity now. So a lot more fragmentation. Eventually there may be eyeball consolidation or attention consolidation with one or more platforms. But I think it's a cyclic nature of industries. And I don't think the metaverse will be any different.
I do agree there is an attention element here, because unlike, let's say, the stickiness of the bank or the financial instruments we use, if this is our world we're living in and you can easily change your world, or someone's got more features in it, like we're living in the Matrix, someone's got a better Matrix, you're going to want to leave. I mean, the same issue comes with the play to earn gaming and stuff like that. It's, even all these games, Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, their fan levels raise and they go through ups and downs. I mean, even Magic the Gatherings had the same thing, although still popular. So I think that is another element just beyond the what he had mentioned.
I think what we also saw from the last 10 years is, if you have one player dominating everything, like the social media big giants, it could be problematic to continue the same things again with the Web 3.0 at the end. So it's customer based and a creator based. So everybody can bring a contribution to it. So the people will decide where this goes to. So the users will decide, and you will also see that digital ownership will play a role. There will be IP management systems and so on. So basically everything what we know from the, let's say, from the analog world will also be transformed into the digital world. And there will be so much which is depending on each other, so that I think that the open versions will be at the end powerful. But we will see a lot of different things of coexistence, consolidation, like we always see in the world, like my two colleagues also mentioned before. But I think we also need to be very careful. This word metaverse is becoming more and more a buzzword. I think we at Sony, we saw this many years before with the word AI in every pitch deck. You saw AI company. A few years later, AI disappeared from every pitch deck. And I think metaverse is some kind of the same. You can check this for every company you're in. It potentially plays a role for the metaverse. So it checks the checkboxes for the capitalists. And then, yeah. So at the end, it's always about distinguishing between what you really need and what's helping. And currently we're spending some time on looking into the blockchain interoperability. I know I have issues with this word, but you know what I want to say. So because if this is not the foundation, if these layers are not working, so and this is not seamless, this will be difficult in the future to handle and to bring this together to one big world. And so there are some companies trying to solve this, which is good. And I know Theta and you are all like experts in this industry. Also, we are proud investors in your company. So it's like on everybody's mind right now that this is needed. So we need to look into these kind of things more and try to connect the dots.
Yeah, and I think what you said is definitely true, that you see a lot of companies dive into it without even knowing what it is. And frankly, the definition of metaverse can be so broad that it could be almost anything related to the internet at this point. But the incentives are definitely in place for them to make a splash and try to do something. It costs very little, relatively speaking, to acquire a prime plot in Decentraland and show that you're taking steps in this metaverse buzzword emerging, rather than being left behind. And if it all goes the way of AI and is falls out of favor, then no real loss there. So I think it's smart for every company to be involved, whether they even if they fully understand it or not. Along those lines, so video is definitely the dominant factor, or 2D visual as we know it today, and that's certainly I think that'll be true for the next few years at least. But there's a really open question about whether, as these metaverses develop, will XR, VR replace these? Certainly with Meta, the company, that's a major reason for their pivot, because they feel like with their foothold with Oculus, they've already got a head start into other form factors that could be emerging. Mar, you may feel the same way about Sony, considering the VR3, is that the new headset coming out with Sony? I mean, you may have a strong opinion on this, but do you think that's the way forward? Or do you think looking at screens is still what will dominate what we think about as metaverse?
Yeah, so personally, I think there's room for all, but video, of course, is playing a key role here in the beginning and also, I think, in the long term. But there's also room for VR, AR, XR, whatever. So, for example, when I'm traveling, my daughter is 7 years old, and she requests me to meet her within Roblox. So we can meet in Roblox and can talk, and the quality is good. So we're spending time together there. Yesterday, I visited a lecture, also in a virtual world, where I was wearing the headsets, and I was taking part in a design thinking. So people together in one room. So in this case, the VR case is completely compelling. And also augmented reality is something where you can merge both worlds easily with each other. So I think it is more or less something that will depend on the use cases and what experience you're looking for. But also, please don't forget the audio level. So because audio is also playing a huge role. You want to be multitasking, and you need this video, but also you can add another layer of audio. So I think at the end, a mixture between different things, even some sensors, what you can wear potentially for smells and so on, will come up one day. So we are going direction to Ready Player One. So
that's pretty funny. So in Ready Player One, they actually, right, part of the whole premise is that there were like the corn syrup droughts and the bandwidth riots. Like the world was so bad, all we had to do was put on the headset. We wanted to escape. And I think, like there is kind of a sentiment because of COVID out there, like people do want to escape. I don't know if it's that bad or that many people feel that, but like it could eventually get there. Definitely. One interesting thing is obviously the form factor of these devices need to get better and way easier, like way more sleeker, way cheaper, and more accessible to everyone. But I do like the AR, like the virtual, like the mix of the reality and using it in the real world. And I've seen some pretty interesting stuff there. But I think that we're definitely a little bit ways off. And it's kind of like in 1999, like pets.com, beyond spending too much money on advertising, people weren't really ready for like shipping and putting their credit card online and getting everything sent to them. Whereas now it's like, we can't even believe we have to wait a whole day for an Amazon package as opposed to getting it this afternoon. So I think it may take time. And in 20, 30 years, more people are going to be willing to plug in, tune in, and drop out or whatever, but currently not right now.
You know what excites me is just how far we've come, though, just over the last couple of years. I remember when I bought my first HTC Vive and you had to have base station 2 of them somewhere in the room. And it was quite a bit of effort to put it on, make sure it's connected to your computer, everything was turned down, Steam VR was running properly. And today with my Oculus Quest, you just put it on and you're in there. And I think removing the friction to using VR or XR or whatever the format might be, I think will go a long ways towards adoption in the future. So it's quite exciting to see what's happening in the space. I would echo my fellow panelists, though, that I think there's a place and time for different forms of media. Even within video itself, there's short form video, there's long form video. There's various different types of different content. And it may be the case that we could be consuming video content within a VR XR environment. That being said, I think...
Oh, go ahead, Imran.
Yeah, that being said, I think what's interesting also is what's powering this future. And that is to say, with increasing demands of bandwidth streaming, for example, with VR, I think there's opportunities in the infrastructure space, for example, with what Theta's been working on over the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was along the lines. Part of our thesis of why we're focusing on video, especially in some emerging VR cases, for example, on Decentraland, video panels within it in some events now are being powered with our data video API. And it's kind of along the lines you're saying. There's different ways of use where it may make sense to use a decentralized or centralized feed on that, but for a longer form concert within Decentraland, for example, or ads being placed on, like billboard ads, the same way you would driving down the freeway in the analog world. There's different ways that video can be used within it, and I think that definitely is correct. It's not one or the other. It's more about how they all come together. And so we're basically trying to make easier ways for people to plug video into their different metaverse elements. So say you have a side of a building and you want to plug something in, a couple lines of JavaScript to pull a video loop that can be relayed over Theta nodes, as opposed to having to build that from scratch every time you have an asset in Decentraland. So those kind of things along the way, I think, are going to go a long way toward making this something easier where creators can be the focus and not only dedicated developers in the metaverse. And that should help the keeping that decentralized aspect as well, where you don't have to be part of a big company to be able to build in these metaverses. It's interesting on real estate because, a lot of, I think all of you guys are probably investing in metaverse companies, some of you in metaverse tokens as well, but metaverse real estate is actually getting a lot of the investment from sort of the non-crypto or institutional investors coming in, or corporate investors like Atari buying a big piece of real estate, or I know next to Snoop Dogg's house, the plot next to him sold for $4.3 million. So how do you see the value accrual happening within these digital assets? Is it primarily the companies building metaverses that will benefit? Is it the tokens like Mana or Sand that you need to use in these metaverses as currency? That the assets themselves, like the real estate? Which do you think is the ultimate winner there? Nick, I believe you've invested in all three. What's your take?
And I don't know if it's easy to determine where the value is going to necessarily accrue, and it could be different in case-to-case basis. But I think there's cases for them all. Like, imagine owning a bunch of land in the metaverse. It's kind of like the convention center. You can shop it out so that someone can rent it to have a convention there, or you can rent it to a brand, or you can sell it. But it's really easy for people to understand, like owning a piece of something in this world that is scarce, like traditional real estate, that in their mind is easy to replicate. The tokens and the governance tokens, those obviously are going to, increase in value as there's more transactions and more activity. Currently, there's a lot of speculation built into those, just as there is with all these assets. And then, we've also invested in equity in some of these companies as well. So I think we've taken a look and, decided that it's hard to say which is going to be the ultimate winner. And we don't want to pick one currently.
Is Sony, tell me, is Sony buying any real estate in the metaverse? Is there a Sony Plaza or a retail store we should expect?
We're a big company, so I don't know if currently right now at the moment somebody's buying some land there. I don't know, but for us it wasn't the first step. I think that's also valuable or valid for many other VCs, is that the first thing what we needed to realize is that we are needing to adjust the reality to a token-based reality. So there are tokens popping up, and for a VC or for a CVC, this also means how to manage this on the balance sheet, on the portfolio, it's volatile and so on. So there are so many different things which you need to sort out first before you could do this. But on the other side, of course, we see the value from this, and you see a lot of different approaches to fundraise for these type of companies. You need to be early because after Series A, they're launching a token, the liquidity comes into the company, and then potentially the equity investment is something you need to think about. And it's connected to some pre-sales of the token, and you need to bet on something which will happen in half a year with the tokenization, which is pretty volatile. But at the end, this is like how these kind of new world is funded, and we need to adjust to this. And I think we're doing a pretty good job by making our homework. But so far we invested more into the infrastructure layers. We invested in you guys. we are investors in RAT and Anzu and GGWP. So all of these companies who will play a role here for toxic behavior with GGWP, with Anzu for the advertisement layer and so on. At the end, you guys together are building blocks from the infrastructure alone. But the next step, of course, to look into this real estate. I can only tell you, I saw a BBC television show a few days before, where there was a guy interviewed a few years before. He bought for £300 some square meters of land in a sandbox, and the journalist started to laugh about him because he's so crazy to throw away his money. The same square meters he has today are now valued 30K. So at the end, it's like investment, like everywhere. So but probably Ibrahim has some other opinion, but for us it is not pure in real estate so far, but it doesn't mean that we're not going there. I don't know.
Yeah. I think we're very much in the early innings of the development of the metaverse. So I think time will tell where value will accrue. There might be models that are token based. There may be models that are not. There may be models where land ownership is a thing. There may be models where that isn't. So I think it really, we'll see. And I'm excited to see what people build and what people come up with. But there could be a future where every VC could have a virtual office in the metaverse. We hang out on Zoom today. There have been versions through the pandemic of spatial Zooms where people can hang out, and visions of potentially crossing over from one company's office to another, right? So I think we'll see how things play out, but I'm pretty excited, especially now that everyone's working from home.
Now, I know we're all very excited about the metaverse. We wouldn't be here, but I do want to balance it a little bit and think about what are the risks of this gold rush in the metaverse that we're not maybe not thinking about, or I want to point out also that originally a lot of the inspiration from Meta and for a lot of metaverses comes from Snow Crash, which, even though it's easy to read as a fun book, it was supposed to be a dystopian satirical take, not something we're supposed to create. So what are we missing here? Is there anything we're jumping ahead on that we should be pumping the brakes because we're not really sure what we're building here? Nick, do you want to kick this off?
I mean, I'd say, probably a lot of the metaverses, they're popping up and, just like, they're not going to stick around, and it may be early. And this is why it's important that we're investing in the infrastructure as well, because I don't think the infrastructure may be there completely for this vision that we have yet. So, that needs to be built out further before a lot of these ideas can happen. Ready Player One, the movie, didn't look very, utopia either. So I do think that there is that aspect to it. And I mean, there already was kind of like a meta character, like a company in there like Meta doing bad things with the metaverse. So, I mean, it should be interesting. I think that people just need to be careful about what the project, if it's a game or a metaverse, what they're promising. Is it technologically possible right now? I mean, if anybody has ever used Decentraland or Sandbox, it's not exactly like the most beautiful, smoothest experience currently, and it has issues. And I think that, so knowing that the technology is still early, and as Ibrahim had mentioned, we're in the early innings, you take that into account when you're looking at these investments.
Mark, any last thoughts or warnings on what we're building here?
No warnings, but I think also you don't make a mistake if you start with looking into avatar technology, which is probably the first step to go in. Then you will face, if you look into this, you will face a lot of different things like text to speech, synchronization, and so on. There's so many different layers around one subsegment. So yeah, I think it takes a decade, and we will see so many more things popping out. So, and I'm really curious about what the future brings, but I have no doubt that this will be a crazy time and super interesting. Also for Sony Innovation Fund, here's our great logo.
well played.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I trust that it'll evolve in the right direction, especially since ownership in this iteration is being geared more toward users. But it's fair to be wary of it. I saw Meta had patented the ability to detect eye movements when you're wearing one of the VR headsets, and ostensibly this was for being able to adjust lighting or your focus on something. But it's not hard to see the leap where, depending on if your eye flickers and you see something, you'll get different ads served to you so that they can profit there too. So I think it's important to stay focused on on what's positive for users and communities. All right, well, that's it for us. We're running out of time here, but I want to thank everyone for joining here.